Great job working so hard on your IA Subpart 1. Today we're going to work on Subpart 2 and 3. So you won't have to write any more essays. You'll be reading, you'll be scored on your annotations, and you'll be scored on your genre-based thinking jobs, as well as the questions that you answer. Make sure you're using testing strategies when you're answering questions, because you also get a grade for those. They're like free extra points. Read the passage and answer the questions that follow. Also make sure you annotate. Excerpt from Out of the Darkness, the story of Louis Braille. The dormitory. The dormitory was dark and still. Only one boy was still awake. He sat on the edge of his bed at a far corner in the room, holding a writing board and a sheet of thick paper on his lap. Working slowly, deliberately, he punched tiny holes across the page with the sharp point of a stylus. Every so often he paused and ran his fingers across the raised dots on the opposite side of the paper. Then he continued working with his stylus. He was interrupted by a husky whisper coming from the next bed. The same hushed conversation took place almost every night. The same questions, the same answers. "Louis, that you? Still punching dots?" "Shh! Be quiet, Gabriel. It's late. You'll wake up everyone. You'd better quit and get some rest, Louis. The director will be furious if you doze off in class again." I know. I'm almost finished now. Go back to sleep." Louis Braille placed his paper and stylus on the shelf behind his bed. Extending his arms before him, he walked across the dormitory and stood before an open window. He was a thin, handsome boy with the strong features of his French ancestors. Tangled blonde hair fell across his forehead. His eyes, tinged with purple, stared blankly from above prominent cheekbones. Louis was a student at the Royal Institute for Blind Youth in Paris. For months now he had been punching combinations of dots into sheets of paper. He was trying to work out a system of reading and writing for all those who cannot see. As it was, blind people could not hope to read or write. The best method yet devised for them was almost useless. Isolated from much of human knowledge, unable to communicate by the written word, they could never share fully in life. It was a fact that Louis could not accept. More than anything else, he wanted to read. Yet his experiments with dots hadn't accomplished much. His friend told him he was wasting his time. Perhaps they were right. Perhaps neither he nor any other blind person could ever take his place in the world of seeing. Standing at the window, he listened to the regular breathing of his sleeping classmates. From the street below, he could hear the rumble of wheels and clicking of hooves as carriages rolled past on the cobblestone pavement. A warm breeze swept through the window, carrying memories of spring in his own village. At home, the fields now would feel moist and soft beneath his bare feet. The hills would be fragrant with the smell of new clover. Local farmers would be bringing their first produce to market in the village square. Reaching back into his childhood, Louis tried to remember what the village square looked like, but he knew it was useless. He had tried to remember so many times before. He could no longer recall the sight of the square, or the fields, or the hills. He could not remember what his house looked like, nor could he picture the faces of his mother and father. The sounds, the smells, and the sensations of home, these were vivid and clear, but the sights had faded and disappeared. He could remember nothing he had ever seen. He had been blind much too long. Right, you'll get a grade on your annotations, and your next grade will come from your genre-based thinking job, so click pause and write your genre-based thinking job in this blank spot. Right, it's time for the questions. You get 2 different grades here. 1 for answering questions right, and your other grade comes from using your testing strategies that Miss Arnold has taught you. Number 1. Read the sentence from paragraph 5. The best method yet devised for them was almost useless. What does the sentence help the reader to understand about Louis Braille's experiments? A. Louis Braille's work relied on the progress other people had already made. B. Other people had already tried and failed to do what Louis Braille hoped to do. C. All of Louis Braille's efforts to help the blind read and write had come to nothing. D. Louis Braille had tried many times before to develop a writing system for the blind. Number 2. In paragraph 6, what does the sentence, "Perhaps they were right," tell the reader about Louis? A. He generally valued the opinions of his friends. B. Usually he was positive about his future success. C. He often thought about the goal of being able to read. D. Sometimes he lost faith in his project. Number 3. In paragraph 7, which word best helps the reader understand what fragrant means? A. Hills. B. Smell. C. New. D. Clover. Number 4. What do the details in paragraphs 7 through 8 help the reader understand about Louis Braille? Select 2 answers. A. Louis Braille actually had not been born blind. B. Louis Braille thought he might not achieve his goal. C. Louis Braille was very smart but disliked being in school. D. Louis Braille had full experiences through his other senses. E. Louis Braille very much wanted to read and write. Number 5. Which statement best describes the relationship between Louis Braille and Gabriel in the passage? A. Gabriel hopes that Louis will succeed and Louis appreciates his encouragement. B. Gabriel is concerned about Louis, but Louis dismisses his concern and continues working. C. Gabriel is annoyed by Louis, and Louis feels the same way about him. D. Gabriel is angry that Louis falls asleep in class, but Louis does not care about that. Number 6. The following item has 2 parts. Answer part A, and then answer part B. Part A. According to the passage, which statement explains what most caused Louis Braille to develop a new system of writing? A. He and his friends attended a special school for blind children. B. He had strong memories of his home that he wanted to express. C. He had been born seeing, but became blind later in childhood. D. He felt the blind could not take an active part in the seeing world. Part B. Which sentence from the passage best supports the correct answer to Part A? A. Louis was a student at the Royal Institute for Blind Youth in Paris. Paragraph 4. B. Isolated from much of human knowledge, unable to communicate by the written word, they could never share fully in life. Paragraph 5. C. A warm breeze swept through the window, carrying memories of spring in his own village. Paragraph 6. D. Reaching back into his childhood, Louis tried to remember what the village square looked like. Paragraph 7. Number 7. Which statement provides the best summary of the passage? A. Braille attended a school for blind youth and he lived with other students in a dormitory. B. As a young student, Braille began to develop a system of writing that could be read by blind people. C. Every night, Braille's friend would warn him that he should get some sleep instead of punching dots. D. Braille used a stylus to punch holes into paper, and then he touched the holes to see what they felt like. Alright, this blank spot is there for you if you need more space for your genre-based thinking job. Make sure you have written a thinking job, you have annotated, and you have used testing strategies on your questions. The next video that you will play will have passage number 2 and some questions, and that will be the last passage that you will do.